All right, fight fans, Sean O'Connell, Dan Hardy here on DAZN MMA. PFL's global season is in the books for 2023. We've crowned 6 champions and handed out 6 $1 million prizes. Now it's on to a championship for PFL Europe in Dublin. We'll do it 4 times, 4 different European championships will be handed out. And of course, the larger carrot dangling for even these champions is to earn their way into the global season where they can chase $1 million. So coming up December 8th in Dublin, PFL European Championships. And Dan Hardy, this is your baby. You are the one who is putting these cards together, putting these fights together. Not the championship fights, but an incredible card even outside of those.
Yeah, I mean, this has been my first year as a matchmaker, as the head of fighter ops for PFL Europe, and it's been a quick learning experience for me. I've not done matchmaking before, but I like to think I understand the sport to the point where I can, make interesting fights that are going to challenge both the guys, make for an interesting and fair fight, and also, make sure that the crowd get what they want. And this card, top to bottom, I mean, there are so many things that we could talk about on this card aside from the championships. The likes of Brett Johns with his calf slicer submission. He's moving up to featherweight, taking on David Turner-Kroll, which is going to be just a great scrap. Tom Breeze in a qualifier for the regular season next year against Clayton Silva, who's a former Brave champion. Just those 2 fights alone, we've got elite level European fighters there, world-class fighters at the same time. And then, local fights as well. Andreas Binder, who is, hoping to join our regular season in Europe next year at lightweight, taking on Daniel Skititsi. That's 2 SBG gyms against one another, both from Ireland. We've got the HQ for Skititsi and Charlestown branch for Binder, and the fact that Owen Roddy and John Kavanagh are going to be coaching against one another, I find that very interesting as well. So I'm interested with a lot of the different fights on this card. I think that the fans in attendance are going to be surprised with some of the performances. I think we're going to have some real breakout fights, and then of course we've got the championships towards the end of the night, which are going to be very, very interesting, and to crown the inaugural champions in the 4 weight classes.
By the way, a couple of madmen making their return to the PFL European cage. The Nuke, Dylan Tuke, is back on this card against Shoshon. That's going to be an interesting one. And then the McGrizzla, of course, Lewis McGrillen, looking to stay undefeated and watch out for his left hand. And also just I'm preparing myself for the post-fight interviews with people like that, because it gets wild with those types of individuals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dylan Tuke, he's fast become one of my favorite fighters to watch. Not only inside the smart cage when he's performing and taking it to new levels this year for sure. Even though he's coming off that loss to Ksuba, I feel like we still saw new levels to his game from Dublin, from Berlin to this most recent performance, and then to be back on home soil, to be fighting someone as tough as Yazid, who comes and throws bombs and he's happy to grapple and fight at a very fast pace. I think that's going to be a real standout fight of the night. And then, as you mentioned, McGrillen, and he's taking on Wesley Meyer, who trains over at GB Top Team with Brad Pickett. He's a wild man. He's a good jiu-jitsu fighter, but he likes to stand and trade as well. And these guys have been beefing for a couple of years now. That's McGrillen's kind of atmosphere going into a fight. So he is beside himself with excitement. I get messages from him most days, be like, it's almost fight week, and he's going to have that intensity matched with Wesley Meyer as well, because he's a very, very intense individual.
All right, let's talk about the championship matchups. I always save the 205 pounders for last, so I'm not going to do it this time. All right, light heavyweight matchup for the European Championship. This is really, really fascinating for me. Smooth Simeon Powell has looked at times absolutely unbeatable. And then, he's shown us when he slows down a little bit, or when he's maybe not as confident in his performance, his opponent can have moments. And then out of nowhere, the Slovenian Jakub Nedo is just a freak. You got Simeon Powell, who 6'5", and if he had taken up any other sport, he'd be a pro in that too, versus a guy who, again, Eastern European communities, like, he was a team handball Olympic level performer, and then found mixed martial arts later on in his athletic career and looks like a duck in water. The guy is so absolutely powerful. Huge light heavyweight. Both of these guys are really big light heavyweights. I don't think we see this one go to decision, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know how this one's going to go. I keep playing it back and forth in my head. The thing is with Nedo, he's so powerful. He does his work so quickly that if he doesn't get the fight win in the first round and a half, that for me is where Simeon really starts to take over. He showed a good ground game against Moamin back in Newcastle, and we know he's a good striker, but we also know that he can kind of work at a steady pace, as we saw in his last fight against Ladero. Just work at a steady pace, stay safe, not take any risks, and utilize that long reach advantage and just kind of picket his opponents and break them down. And with 25 minutes, you've got to think he's got another 10 minutes to try and instigate a conclusion in this fight. But it's all about Nedo starting fast and trying to get the victory early, because I think that's what's familiar for him. And you're right. I mean, Nedo's the kind of guy that if he wasn't in the smart cage, he would be smashing people into plexiglass on ice. He'd make a wicked hockey player, enforcer. You know what I mean? He's got that kind of that powerhouse vibe to him. Whereas Simeon Powell's more of a slick striker with volume, and I think that he's very good at breaking people down over time. The big difference for me in this one will be Simeon Powell's knees if they close down, because he can lift them up to anybody's chin, even someone as tall as Nedo. I feel like that's one of the most competitive fights on the card, and it could be a real back and forth. And again, something, both of these guys are interested in winning the belt and potentially moving on to the global regular season. But it wouldn't surprise me if even the person that comes out as the loser in this one chases them over to the regular season to try and get a rematch. They're both very, very qualified, and I think they're both ready for that step up.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, globally, 205 pounds as a weight class right now needs an injection of young talent, needs an injection of dangerous young fighters, and both of these guys certainly qualify for that. So we'll see how that one plays out. You already mentioned one Skititsi on the cards. The featured Skititsi is Valentina Skititsi as she takes on Dakota Ditcheva. I can't help but think of the amount of pressure on Dakota Ditcheva in a fight like this, right? I mean, she's been, whether she likes it or not, she's been molded and built as kind of a face, as somebody who's supposed to represent the PFL, the future of this division, maybe on the global stage. Obviously, she's a huge draw on the PFL Europe cards, and with that comes an intense amount of pressure, but she handles it like an absolute veteran. It doesn't seem to shake her at all.
No, I'm always impressed when she steps in there. Not only her composure, but her ability to keep adding skills to her game. Back in Newcastle, we saw a ground game from her, which I think she's going to need in this fight against Skititsi. Skititsi's the one coming in with less experience, but she has so much determination. We saw that back in Newcastle as well. We saw how eager she is to close range down and throw big power shots, and it's going to be someone a bit more scrappy and with that kind of confidence that's going to get inside Dakota's game. If you don't have the confidence to close range down, she's going to utilize that reach and those long range Muay Thai strikes to pick you off. I think Skititsi's got to get this fight to the ground pretty quickly, or at least make it a dirty fight in the clinch. Close range boxing, head position. I think that both of these fights have got pressure, and I think it's a different kind of pressure. For Dakota, the expectations are high, and there's a pressure that comes with that. And to realize her potential, she needs to win this belt. And then on the other side, you've got Valentina, who's 3 fights into her career. She missed out on a fight in Paris because her opponent missed weight. And she's taking on Dakota, who the majority of people are expecting to win. That would give me real motivation as the underdog to really go in there and cause the upset. And I think, with this time that she's had, the main focus for everybody in this division is, how do I beat Dakota, right? They're trying to get through their next opponent, knowing full well that the Dakota's the most likely person they're going to find in the final. So I think she's spent pretty much a year now focused on how she's going to solve this problem. And she's got some great minds around her in her gym to help her do that. I'm interested to see what game plan she brings to the table to try and solve this problem.
The remaining championship bouts on one half of each feature Irish fighters, and we're going to be in Dublin, and the atmosphere in all of our PFL European shows have been absolutely fantastic so far. I'm really expecting the lid to blow off in Dublin, because you've got a couple of Irish fighters searching for a strap. Let's start with the John Mitchell, Jakub Kashuba. That's a 155-pound European championship. Both of these guys, I think, have the skills necessary to jump into the global season. This is, like you said, with light heavyweight, this is one that's hard for me to predict, and I think going to be one of the most competitive fights on the card.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they're quite different fighters as well. You know, Kasuba's he's a specimen, a physical specimen. He's a difficult person to deal with in the clinch and on the ground because of his physicality. But also, you know, once it hits the ground, he's got great jiu-jitsu skills as well. And then if he does keep this one at range, he started as a kickboxer, so I would imagine he's going to lean into that footwork, lateral movement, and kicking game. On the other side, you've got John Mitchell, who's much more of a boxer. He's going to try and push him into range and use his boxing potentially to wrestle, set up takedowns, and work ground and pound. That's what we've seen in his last couple of fights. I know he's been talking up a striking match in this one, but if he feels like the smartest route is to smother this individual and, you know, utilize the conditioning to fill those big muscles of Kasuba with lactic acid and slow him down and make him tired over 25 minutes, that might also be a smart game plan as well. I think there's a lot of different ways that this can play out, but both of these guys have got finishing capability. We've not seen it from John Mitchell yet in the PFL, but that makes him only more determined, I think, to deliver one of those finishes to get the championship belt around his waist. Both very, very skilled individuals, though, and a very, very difficult fight to pick.
Kasuba still undefeated as a pro mixed martial artist and very intent on remaining that way. Flying the Polish flag, but lives and trains in the United States and is just, you know, swimming with the sharks at his gym constantly. So that brings us to a Bantamweight championship. Franz Malambo, the adopted son of Dublin, so to speak, and he's taking on Khurshid Kokarov. This one is going to be very fascinating. And it looks to me like on paper, it should be that, all right, we know that Malambo's going to try to use the length and he's going to try to use the creative striking, and Kokarov's going to try and get inside and get it on the ground and make this ugly. But when it seems as simple as that, it almost never is.
I don't think this is a very easy fight for both of these guys. I think, you know, Kakarov's got a very interesting pacing to his style of striking. Of course, he's going to have good wrestling, and we expect him to have to use that in this fight because I do feel like this is going to move through ranges quite quickly. Malambo is a slick striker from the outside. I don't think he's got the same kind of snap and power that he's going to see from Kakarov, but I do think he's got the wisdom and the experience to be able to make this fight very difficult at any range. But it's going to be the movement and the trickiness of Malambo that's going to get him the fight won in this case. I feel like he's not going to be able to beat Kakarov for volume or pressure because that's really what he specializes in. And the awkwardness of Kakarov's style as well makes it difficult to stand in the pocket with him and trade. You've kind of got to give him space to express himself and then try and catch him on the other side of it. But, you know, if Kakarov starts to take a few shots and if Malambo starts to frustrate him a bit from the outside and he's not as hittable as Kakarov was expecting, then, you know, we might see Khurshid try and close this fight down and start to grapple. And then we're going to see the SBG grappling skills of Malambo as well, which are formidable and often underestimated. And I think Malambo is going to get a real pop when he walks out into the arena. He's been a mainstay, a staple of the SBG gym for a long time. And I think people have you know, they've grown to love him as you know, one of the main SBG faces. And I think when he walks out into that arena, it's going to be like a homecoming for him.
So those 4 European championships, $100,000 to the winners, and then of course the promise of a future in the PFL global season where they could chase $1 million check. And that's what it's the Champions League of mixed martial arts. These regional leagues are going to feed into the global season, and you're going to see careers be built on their success inside of the Smart Cage. And we'll finish, by the way, with another SBG product. Nathan Kelly, who already won his Challenger Series opportunity, right? He gets to fight on home soil as well. 2 Nate Kellys, in fact. Nate Kelly and Nathan Kelly on this card. So don't get confused. Just tune in and enjoy right here on DAZN.